Jed York needs some new business cards. No longer just CEO, he is now officially the owner of the San Francisco 49ers. What that means for the Niners present and future. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us the first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate all of the everydayers out there, and we appreciate it when you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, lots of news coming from the owners' meetings. I think they're officially called the league meetings now. It used to be called the owners' meetings. All the head coaches are there. The head coaches take a big photo, which is always fun to look at, and it's always weird and goofy and awkward for some reason. So love the head coach panoramic photo from 2024, but some important issues being voted on around the league. We'll get to the hip drop tackle and the new kickoff rules and maybe some more reviewable things in the NFL season. But first, Jed York ponying up some cash, buying the 49ers from his parents, essentially, is what's going on here. So Denise Debartolo York and John York no longer the official owners of the San Francisco 49ers, still hold some stake in the 49ers, but their son, Jed York, nephew of Eddie Debartolo, is now the official owner, Croc, of the San Francisco 49ers. He's been acting as the owner, as the CEO for a long time, and sort of shorthand when we speak about the owner of the 49ers, we speak as if Jed York has been the owner of the 49ers, but now it's official, and he is the owner, and that is his title of the San Francisco 49ers. What do you think about this for Jed York? What do you think about this for the San Francisco 49ers?
How quickly things change in the NFL. You know, it was not too long ago fans were paying their money to fly banners over Levi Stadium saying, fire Jed York, right? And now the way that he's viewed, because of how the 49ers organization has turned around, how they are viewed through the media, through the fan base, just everyone's confidence level in this team. If I said right now, man, how many games 49ers win next year? I'm pretty sure you're saying minimum 12 games, right? How far can they go? Potentially a Super Bowl. They're that kind of contender year in, year out. And nobody thought that Jed York would be able to put this type of team together. He got a big fish to start off, right? Hiring Jim Harbaugh. And that was a huge signing when he brought him over, kind of stole him from the Miami Dolphins, if I remember correctly. But ended up firing him. People kind of like, what the heck? And it was clear there was kind of some kind of disconnect in the locker room or just the fit between those two guys. I remember hearing rumors about Jim Harbaugh being traded to the Cleveland Browns. I'm like, what? Jim Harbaugh, why would they do that? Then he gets fired a year later. You're like, wow, were those rumors true?
There's something to that. Yeah, it's clearly there was the men only, right? The Jim Harbaugh told Jed York to get out of a meeting because it was men only. And you'd say that to an owner, you're not going to be around very long. And so I think that was a clear case of, and that was the whole win with class stuff too, right? And so the 49ers were, at least in that period, winning, maybe without class. There was a lot of arrests. That was a weird football team, right? And they cleaned some of that up and then started losing with class. But now they are winning with class.
Were you losing with class? I mean, it just the losing. This is what I'll say. Like the biggest. He's over everything. He's been overseeing this entire operation with the firings, the hirings, and whatnot. And we try to be, super, objective or non-objective on this show, and try not to speak from our super fandom perspective. But I've watched a lot of 49er games, pretty much every game. I don't miss a game. We went on the trip for New Year's one year. 49ers were playing. I turned my phone off, made sure I recorded it. As soon as I got home, I watched it. Like, I'm not missing a down. This is when the 49ers didn't even have a chance to make the playoffs at this time. Jimmy Garoppolo was playing week 17 against the LA Rams. So I'm a huge fan, obviously. During the Chip Kelly years, I turned games off. It was that bad. And that was around the time people wanted him fired. So for him to go from that and how he was viewed to this, and this move happening, and the first thing I see on social media, wow, what a great move for Jed. What a great move for the 49ers. How fast things change and how far we've come with Jed York.
I'll leave profanities out.
There's so many great clips of Jed York in that press conference where he's like, you don't fire. He was basically like, well, I'm not going to dismiss myself. So I'm going to try to fix something else, even if I am the problem, is basically what he was saying. And an owner is not going to coach the team and general manage the team. And I know some owners are more involved, but Jed York wasn't ever going to be that guy. So he had to find the right person to be in charge and to try to accomplish the goal that he set out, that he told 49ers fans that he was going to do, which was win with class. And it's turned out that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been exactly that. I mean, this team is really good. They're in the NFC Championship game. They're in the Super Bowl. Now, they haven't pulled that ring yet, and some fans are very unhappy about that fact. But, man, thinking about where we were in those days, and I always tell the story about when I was at Pro Football Focus and that 2016 season, I was charting routes for PFF. And week one, I'm like, okay, hey, I'll request the 49ers game. 49ers fan, cover the 49ers. I want to chart the routes for the 49ers game. It'll be a nice little bonus. By like week 4, I was like, give me any team but the San Francisco 49ers. This is awful. First of all, the offense was bad. Just mesh concept. It's just crossers all day long. The receivers were bad on top of it. It's like, I don't want to watch this. I already watched it on Sunday. It's terrible. I don't want to stay up until 4 a.m. charting routes of the game I just watched and watch this garbage and chart these routes. I want to chart a different football team. And so those were quick.
How long does it take you to get through a game charting routes?
Charting routes, luckily, is much better. And then, so I got into the charting routes thing, and that was a lot of fun. But the worst thing at PFF is called player participation, which is all you're doing is saying who's on the field and where they're lining up every play of an entire game. And we get the tape early at PFF if you're one of the analysts. So, I'd be up sometimes just not sleeping. And the sun's coming up and I'm trying to finish a full game. It takes hours and hours because every single snap, and you have to go back and you have to figure out, okay, this guy's got he's got long sleeves underneath, white gloves. And is that because you're watching the game tape? And you're like, I can't see what the number is. So you're trying to figure out, you have to go back and forth like every play, all 11 guys, offense and defense, every play, special teams as well. Like who's on the field, right? It was even harder than that because at least it was like new, better footage. PFF was doing this thing where they were simultaneously at that point going back in history and trying to regrade old games to try to get a bigger catalog of grades and trying to do player participation from a broadcast from 4x3 square old TV broadcast was in some cases literally impossible. There was an Eagles game and they're wearing the dark green and the black and you can't tell what the jerseys are. I think one of the most difficult was doing a college game of University of Washington with dark purple and the contrast between the numbers and the jersey wasn't good. And you're like, what is going on? But this one Eagles game I'll never forget. It's like at the snap, the old broadcast, the snap was Donovan McNabb's face. How am I supposed to tell you what 11 guys are on the field if this is all you give me, one guy's face? It's zoomed in on his face. The ball is snapped, and then the play happens. So all 11 guys aren't even shown. So I don't even know how you figure out who's on the field in those days. And so those were some difficult times. So player participation was awful. Godspeed to all the army of people that are at PFF and give us those grades. I'd much rather at this point just pay them to tell me who's on the field than be the guy that's trying to do that and grade those things. And so, and I did some other things with PFF with little articles and infographics and some of those stuff, which was a lot of fun. But anyway, it's tedious. It takes a long time. And those guys, Sunday night, Monday morning, they don't have a life. They are watching tape and giving us all this great information that we get so quickly. I'm amazed at how quickly they're even quicker now at getting that information out than they used to be.
And PFF, they take a lot of heat from a lot of people and sometimes players, but then players also post it when it's good about them. And it's like, look at my PFF numbers. So I think it's interesting. Real quick, moving forward, how do you feel about the 49ers in the hands of Jed York? Like, do you feel like, and he was really young kind of being in charge of the 49ers. Now, obviously, he's fully in charge. Do you think it's just kind of this growth and maturity thing that we've all had to go through, and he tried to balance that, and we just kind of had to live through and watch him go through ups and downs of really kind of becoming a man, dealing with older men? Was he like 31 or something, taking over 49ers? Like, that is young.
He was young.
That is young.
And obviously he'd been around the team and around football, but didn't necessarily have a football background. And I think it's always tough for owners. We're seeing David Tepper right now. It's like, cool, you're a successful businessman. This is different. This football thing is different. And he absolutely had to go through some growing pains. And when fans were upset with him, it was for good reason. He was making bad moves and bad maneuvers. And it was like, this franchise might be screwed because this guy doesn't really get it right now. And he's come out the other side okay. How much of that is just he chose the right guy? And when he has to choose the next head coach, is it just a coin flip? It's like, I hope this works out. Or does he understand more about it and why whatever is working would be my question. I don't know if we have the answer to that yet, but obviously I don't know how any 49ers fan or any 49ers media could not have more confidence now in Jed York than they did at one point when there's planes flying over the stadium that says fire Jed York.
We do kind of have the answer for that. And the answer is he clearly maybe feels like there's not quite an exact science to picking the coach. So he's just hitching his wagon to Kyle Shanahan. And right now, like, Kyle, please just make me look good. Like, if you could stay here for the next 20 years, you got it. What do you need? Oh, you want to trade, and use 3 first-round picks on the quarterback and then just get rid of them after 4 games? Whatever. However you want to do it, we're going to rock with this. You continue doing your thing. You're winning a lot of games. Make me look good. Make me a lot of money. And right now, that new stadium is making Jed a lot of money, the money that he's able to pay off his parents to really take over the 49ers. But I don't think he wants to go through the process of trying to find another coach. I think it's, hey, Kyle, what we got going right now, we're winning a lot of games. We're having a certain level of success. Obviously, you want the ultimate level of success, which is winning a Super Bowl. But I think he'd take what he's getting right now from the 49ers for the next 20 years, even if that means he maybe doesn't win a Super Bowl, or maybe he wins one, and then that kind of gives him another 10-year kind of window of being able to keep Kyle in there. But I bet he feels really good about where he's at right now with the team on and off the field.
And I don't think, to answer the question that's inevitably going to come, I don't think it changes anything going forward with this. Like, maybe he has to answer less to John and Denise York. I don't think he answered much. I think he was pretty autonomous as being in charge of the 49ers. So now being the owner, I don't think any of that probably changes. And so as long as he's got the right people that are making the decisions and stays out as he had and has, and let them do their thing. And maybe there's a step for him to learn to be like, step in, because he has this experience now. And if this head coach or the next head coach says, hey, we want to trade 3 picks to go up and get a quarterback, he might step in and say, actually, we're going to not do that. Okay. But everything else, you're fine. So I wonder if he does kind of flex a little bit on some stuff going forward. But as of now, he picked guys that know what they're doing, and he's letting them roll. And that's probably the best thing he can do in the near future. So I don't think anything changes for the 49ers. Jed York, official owner of the San Francisco 49ers. League rules changing at the league meetings. We'll get to those changes next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry. It shouldn't be a hassle when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Killer last-minute deals at Game Time, all-in prices and views from your seat, plus their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You see the view from your seat before you buy. You know exactly what you're going to get when you arrive from those seats. All-in prices. You see your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out, which is key. Just a couple of taps. Tickets are right there on the app. When you get to your event, you don't have to fish through your email. They're right there on the Game Time app for you. And don't forget those last-minute tickets. And you can even buy tickets up to an hour after your event starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. As a former defensive back, Eric Crocker, the hip drop tackle has now been banned in the NFL. Richard Sherman said something interesting recently about being a defensive back. And when you have, say, a Derrick Henry on the field and you have to tackle him and you are giving up 50 pounds to a guy, you have to use a lot of different ways to try to bring that guy down. Hip drop tackle now from behind, which is essentially, I don't know if I can pull up the exact wording of what they have made officially illegal, but it is, let's see if I can find it. I don't see it where I'm at right now, but essentially it's dropping the weight. You're tackling a guy from behind and you grab him from behind, you drop your weight and you land your body. Hip drop is why, because you land you drop your hips and drop your weight on the back of the player's legs. And it has created some injuries, Croc. They're trying to create less injuries in the NFL. What do you think about banning the hip drop tackle?
It's tough. I try to look at things from all angles, right? I have my perspective on things, and then, okay, why are people saying these other things? Let's listen to that perspective. I mean, we do that all the time on this show, right? I look at the YouTube comments and I see people talking about the Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is not getting traded. And it's like, we're not saying he's getting traded. We're just trying to give a different perspective. What if it happens, right? And we're saying it's a small percentage chance, but we're just trying to look at things from all angles on what potentially could happen. So when you look at this ruling, I try to remove my defensive back cap from it. I know my initial thoughts were, this is wild. Like, as a defensive back, especially, I was a big DB, right? 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds, 198 pounds. Like, I was considered a bigger DB, and that I'm still small in comparison to these 5'9", 5'10" running backs that are 220 pounds running 4.4 right at me. Right, like that that velocity plus mass and like move, like that is not a good combination when it comes to the compact. So you try to figure out different ways to where you're trying to hurt a guy, but how can I get him down and limit the leak yardage gain? And that was a Robert Saleh term, leak yardage. It's really difficult, and you already don't want to have to think too much about how I have to tackle a guy or how I have to bring a guy to the ground. From that perspective, I hate it. I hate it for the DBs. I hate it for linebackers. This isn't the horse collar, where horse collar is like a lot easier to just not do, right? Grab a guy by his collar, drag him down from the back. This is just, okay, this guy is running at me. Maybe it's a big tight end, 6'5", 250 pounds. He's running away. Okay, let me grab him and drop my weight so I bring him down, not drop my weight so I snap his ankle. Like, that's not my intentions. And I think that's the part where, with a lot of these different rulings for defensive players, what is the intent? If you have a receiver laying out in the air and then you're just going to go spear him helmet to helmet, throw a flag, kick him out, whatever. But when it's just a guy just running and you go and hit him, it's like, what's the intent? Like, my intent isn't to knock this guy dead out the game. My intent is to separate him from the ball. When I do the drop tackle, whatever they're calling it, what's my intent? Is it to snap his ankle or just bring this 6'5", 250-pound tight end to the ground? So it's a little frustrating as a defender and having to watch in all these rules they continue to put in place that hurt guys on the defensive side of the ball or make them have to think about things, and maybe they get hurt doing it because they can't play full speed. But then on the other end, and you have guys getting hurt at what rate? In comparison to a regular tackle, the hip drop tackle, like at what rate is the guy getting hurt more? Maybe they have some analytics on that would say, well, Croc, this is exactly why we're doing it. But I hate it. I hate it. And I've been hating these things for a while and you see everybody on social media complain and it's like, man, well, just give them flags. And I want to kind of throw my hands up in the air like, man, just give them flags. I guess you got to figure it out as a defensive player, but it is really tough to go from, man, let me just figure out how to get this guy to the ground, to now, if I hit a guy here, I'm flagged. If I hit a guy here, I'm flagged. If I hit a guy, he's a defensive receiver going over the middle, and I'm trying to separate him from the ball, but I get flagged. And now if I drop my weight to bring Travis Kelce down, I'm flagged. I think it's a little ridiculous.
It does get very difficult. I don't think it affects the passing game as much as it might affect the running game. And we saw the running game take a little bit of a comeback recently in the NFL. So does this add to that? Because teams already try to make the DBs tackle on the outside, and if they have one less way to bring a guy down, that can skew things definitely toward the offensive side of the ball. I don't want to hate on any of the new rules changes just because they're rules. If it means less injuries, I get it, and I'm okay with it. And I guess it's been something that's been banned in rugby for a long time, and it's been a positive change there. My question is, how do they teach it? How do they teach the tackle? How do you still get a guy down from the same angle if you're a defensive back? How do they make it safer? And what does that look like would be my question. What are the coaching points?
I see all these things with rugby, and there's one big difference. You're not wearing any padding or any helmets, right? So even, let's say if I'm not intentionally trying to hit a guy helmet to helmet, but because I have a helmet on and the shoulders, I'm leading with my shoulder this way. My helmet kind of gets in the way. There's contact. Like all of a sudden, like that's a flag. As opposed to playing rugby, maybe my head doesn't hit him because there's not this extra inches of padding on both guys. You see what I'm saying? I think there is this different level of caution just from not having pads on. So if you want the NFL game to be more like rugby, what I would suggest is take the padding off of them. And I bet they would really tackle a lot different because you don't have anything to truly protect you.
I thought about that too. So what would an NFL game look like if you took the helmets away? Or would you just have a couple of insane people that are still leading with their dome? You know what I mean?
They would not. They would not. Take the helmets away, they would not. And it's not even so much about trying to lead with the helmet, but it's like anything. It's like if you have a Ferrari, every once in a while you want to open up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not even intentional. Sometimes like those cars that I have a Dodge Charger, it has a Hemi. I don't got the Scat Pack or the Hellcat, but a strong engine. Sometimes I'm floating. I don't even realize, dang, I'm going 85 miles an hour. My bad. Let me go down and put the cruise control on, right? Put it down to 72, put the cruise control on. I think with helmets, I don't even think they're realizing that they are intentionally going, like that they're going with their helmet. And that's the part there where if you take it away, I bet guys would be much more cautious of not like leading with their helmet, but making sure that there's no contact helmet to helmet with their heads.
A few more changes coming to an NFL near you, including roughing the quarterback penalties, reviewable, and the new kickoff rules next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because right now, FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed or your favorite team left in the final 16. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 at FanDuel in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right, $200 extra to play with and use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all in the tourney. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Of course, you can bet on NFL football still, NFL futures for the 2024 season, and those tasty, tasty draft props. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you might have some pretty good insight on some ways to get a little bit of an advantage there when it comes to those draft props. It's one of my favorite ways to bet every single year at FanDuel. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. $72 miles an hour is the Crocker sweet spot on the cruise control. Huh? I press it a little bit heavier than that. I go 74. Depends what this posted speed limit is. And I'm making a run down California actually after this podcast, going to Visalia, California. And it depends on what the speed limits are, because you go when you're in the city limits of a town, it's a little less. So you pull it back, and then in between cities, I crank it up a little bit. I don't go too high with it, but I love the cruise control. And a new feature in new cars, which I love, which is insane, Croc, is the cruise control that changes if you have a car in front of you.
Oh yeah, so, dude, I've used that in some rental cars. Now my Charger doesn't have that. I will be getting a Tesla as soon as I get this house. I'm waiting till I get the house, then I'm gonna like trade my car and get it tested, because a Hemi in Stockton, California, too much driving. But the reason why I try to be a little bit safer, so even if the speed limit is 70, I try not to go over 73. when you have a car that looks like just a certain way, the cops are more likely to just catch their attention with you. You know, my engine is just louder. My windows are all tinted because, you know, in Arkansas, you can have all your windows tinted. So I try to just be a little bit more cautious so I don't draw any more attention to myself.
Croc getting profiled.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not saying racially profile, but just like your car, like they will profile you on your car. If I had which I have a Mazda 6 I drive around a lot. I just got for like a little get around car. I'm saying nobody's paying attention to me in the Mazda 6.
Mazda. I got the CX-5, dude. I'm way under the radar for sure. That's why I push it a little bit with that cruise control.
2012 Mazda. They're not paying attention to that Charger with the Hemi with the engine and the tinted windows. they'll get you.
I love this one. This is a change to the reviewable plays in the NFL, Croc. And now the replay assistant, which is the booth replay assistant, will now be permitted to correct certain types of incorrect calls for roughing the passer and intentional grounding. And so it must be purely objective here. So this is, for example, an illegal hit to the quarterback's head. They look at the review and they see, oh yeah, the player actually didn't hit that head. Completely objective. It's not the judgment call that they're taking out of it. It's the purely objective stuff. Was he in or out of the pocket? Things like that. So now reviewable, and the competition committee, according to Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, has long opposed challenges to penalty calls because it essentially substitute one person's judgment for another's. So this is much more narrow, but another step toward empowering the replay assistant to fix clear and obvious mistakes. So I love that, and I hope it doesn't take a long time to get these mistakes fixed, because how long replays take is a big one too. But a huge 15-yard penalty can be game-changing, Croc. So you got to get those things right.
Yeah, definitely. Basketball does a pretty solid job with this. You know, NBA, there's certain things that they review at different times. You can challenge things, or sometimes there's things that automatically get reviewed. You know, LeBron James hits a three-pointer, and if his toe's on the line, they might actually even let them play for a little bit, but they're actually watching it during that time, and they'll take 1 point off the board if his toe was on the line. So they review those things. Now, if it's a closer game or towards the end, they'll stop the game momentarily, take a look at it. Okay, his toe was on the line. Let's take those points off. Okay, let's continue playing ball. And I think they do a fairly good job of keeping the game flow going.
I'm going to bring it up for the viewers on YouTube and talk a little bit about the new kickoff rules. And Croc, we probably got to talk at some point, because the 49ers still haven't replaced Ray McCloud. Is the return game going to be a bigger factor as far as kick returns with the new rules, if those rules pass? And actually the owners' meeting is going on right now. Things are being voted on. We don't know if it's going to pass. It feels like the new kickoff rules are going to pass, Croc, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. But essentially the new rules are trying to make it so that kickoffs are both safer and there's more kickoffs getting returned. Because at this point, kick returns don't exist. Every kicker's kicking it through the end zone, and that's that. And I'm going to bring it up on the screen here because there's a nice little diagram here from Tom Pelissero that is shared by the league, and it shows what it's going to look like. So NFL hybrid kickoff is what they're calling the rule that they're betting on. And so the kicker, as you can see on the screen right now, if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll try to explain it, the kicker is in the normal spot, 35-yard line, kicking off from where they normally kick off. But his entire coverage team is no longer hanging out with him. His entire coverage team is 25 yards ahead at the opponent's 40-yard line, and 10 yards in front of them is where the return team is at the 5 yards ahead of them at the 35. The opposing 35 is where the kick return team is lined up, called the setup zone. So you have the kickoff starting line at the 40, and then 5 yards of space between the setup zone. So no high-speed collisions there. Then there's a landing zone, which is the 20-yard line to the end zone, which is essentially the red zone. That's where the league wants people to kick the ball off so it is returnable for returners. And then if you kick the ball into the end zone, now you're getting penalized to the 30-yard line instead of the 25-yard line. So it's an extra 5 yards that you're giving the offense if you do kick the ball in the end zone. And there's no more fair catches of these. So essentially, you're trying to get the ball in that landing zone, and kickers, the goal is for kickers to be aiming to get the ball in play and have more returns, and then not have the high-speed collisions, because you've got the kickoff unit starting closer to where the ball is being returned. What do you think about this potential new rule, Croc?
I was wondering how long it would take the NFL to adopt this. This is coming straight over from the XFL or one of those other leagues.
Slight tweak, but it's pretty much the XFL rules. And I haven't watched a lot of XFL, but if you have watched it, it's actually one of the coolest things because obviously the NFL I think needs a bit of a minor league, and they can't figure out how they want to do that. And that's kind of what the XFL is trying to fill that hole. But this is something that the NFL would never vote on unless they saw it in practice. And thankfully, the XFL has shown them what this could be. And so I think it's a positive change because right now it's like do away with kickoffs with the way it's currently done. You know, if you start the ball at the 20-yard line, whatever. But if you get some returns, then it might matter a little more. And coverage units and return units might start to matter a little bit more for NFL team rosters.
I really like this. And, the first thing I was thinking of, like, all right, how important is the hang time from the kick and all that. But the guys that are going for the tackles, the kickoff coverage unit, they're already starting out in plus territory. So, heck yeah, just kind of a nice little pooch kick in between the 10 and the 5 or so, and you get a return. So that helps guys have jobs, right? Like the Ray McClouds, makes them a little bit more important. And you have the kickoff back, which was something that I was curious to see if it would go away because it felt like it was trending towards you might as well do away with the kickoff.
I'm down with it. And then there's other rules because now you can't do an onside kick. So it's essentially like, how there's the go for it or, the 2-point conversion or kicking. It's kind of that now, but for kickoffs. If this does pass, and it looks like it's going to pass, and we'll see, vote's not in yet for that quite yet as of this recording. The team, onside kicks can only happen in the fourth quarter for the trailing team, and you have to declare it. And so then you kind of go back and do the normal setup and you do an onside kick. So that's what the onside kick rules
and everybody's aware, which again, you don't have the surprise onside kicks, but I like that, 7-on-7, we went to a tournament in Southern California and they had this rule that I wasn't familiar with. It was really new and might be exclusive to those OT7 tournaments, but they had a money drive, which instead of the drive being worth your normal 7, it was worth 10. But if you don't score the touchdown, they actually they either take 2 points away or they give 2 points to the other team. So that was something that I liked as well. It's kind of just cool where, it's kind of, hey, use that at your own risk because if you use it and you don't score, the other team is going to get something from that. So, but again, just nice little tweaks that kind of change how you have to be, a little bit more strategic. But both teams are aware if you're on your money drive, you have to declare to the referee, hey, this is a money drive. Then they let everyone, the other side know, hey, this is a money drive. This drive, if they score, is worth 10 points. So I like having to declare, hey, this is onside, but it does take away from the surprise onside kick, which is tough because even though you don't see it a whole lot, when you do see it, that's pretty cool. But for people that might get upset by that, when's the last time we've seen the 49ers doing a surprise kick? So it's not something that happens.
It happens so little. I'd rather do away with kickoffs completely. And to be honest with you, like onside kick is like, is it even necessary? Like, do we really need to give a team that's behind that many chances? Like, just win the game playing normal football. Do we need all this extra stuff? I don't think so. You know what I mean? So
it adds to the dramatics.
It does. And the league wants close games and wants teams to think that their team has a chance. So onside kicks will still be a part of it. I'm honestly not against any of the new rules, even the hip drop, if it keeps guys more healthy, and DBs can't tackle anyway, so who cares? All right.
That's crazy.
I guess safeties can tackle. More NFL draft coverage. We've got you covered every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. You can find it 24/7 free stream on YouTube, Amazon Fire TV as well. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.